Hello and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. Welcome to our Bugcrowd series. Today is In the Mind of a Hacker, or Hack the Hackers series. Today we're joined by Francisco Bolivar from Madrid, Spain. Fran, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thanks for inviting me.
And from Bugcrowd, Sajeeb Lohani, the Global Technical Information Security Officer with Bugcrowd. Saj, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Fran, we've got an interesting story here. You've used a misconfiguration of a ServiceNow platform to service around 90 bounties on the platform. So it's really good insight in terms of some references to interviews that we've been doing with CISOs, because you've just effectively secured 90 companies, right? So that's the delivery of this platform in the Bugcrowd community. But we'll also get your insights into how you approach ethical hacking and then also how you're making some money out of it as well. But yeah, maybe introduce us to what you do, how you approach the role of an ethical hacker. And then we'll sort of dive into, we're also going to cover off on vulnerability rating, taxonomy, and VDPs, or vulnerability disclosure programs as well. But yeah, Fran, how do you approach your role?
Well, my role is a little bit divided. In my normal day, I'm working in a big multinational pharma company. But when I have free time, I would like to continue researching and investigating different books. I used to find the bug before find the company. What it means, I used to try to get the most interesting bugs, or the bugs that I think that it could be impactful for the companies. In order to get the best bounties, in order to get the critical, the P1s on the programs. So I'm trying to research, but based on my partial time doing book hunting, I try to read a lot of articles and try to exploit these bugs into the different programs.
It was actually kind of the reverse way that I would have imagined. So the company puts the bug bounty out, and then you try to hack it in. You're coming out with an exploit and going, okay, well, I'm just going to use that against as many as I can on the platform. Sarge, it's a relatively straightforward, simple way to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. You're spot on, mate. That it's kind of the general, it's the exact reverse of the general way that people do things, but clearly very effective. Like,
Yeah.
As you were saying, 90 companies. If you actually look at the impact, Fran, I'm sure it's actually probably more than 90 companies, because you're looking at 90 companies, but you're affecting the supply chain of thousands more.
Yeah.
So hats off. That type of research is what keeps, frankly, us all alive.
Maybe just talk us through, it was a misconfiguration. So it's not necessarily a sort of a CVE or a common vulnerability exploit, but a misconfiguration. And so therefore you're educating these companies in its own right. But yeah, just to explain how that actually happened. And I suppose another backup question is how common is this for you to do? Was this kind of a gold nugget for you, or this is kind of a general standard approach?
It's my general approach. In fact, this ServiceNow misconfiguration, it happened before in 2023. It was discovered by a researcher called Aaron Costello. And I started to follow that guy and try to understand the different researches. And recently, in September 2024, he released another article that was not so popular like the previous one. To be honest, I don't know why. So I understood his article, I understood the fail, I understood what is going on. And of course, I understand that ServiceNow is one of the biggest platforms used by all the big companies in the world. So why not give it a try and try to find if I can found some vulnerabilities with this misconfiguration. This is very often happening in many other different cases. For Salesforce misconfiguration, it happens very often. For Adobe Experience Management, happen very often. I have friends that are only focused on AAM, on Adobe Experience Manager, because it's are big companies used by many big companies, and at the same time, it's a little challenging to understand all the settings. And for us, the book hunters, it's quite easy to finally understand where the most common fails are. And most of the companies are making the same mistakes in the configurations. I don't hunt very often for CVEs because of the rules of book bounty. Book bounty usually try to find those findings that are not in the radar of the companies, and CVEs are usually in the radar of many of the companies. They request to us to do not report or do not attack them using CVEs released less than 90 days, because usually this is the time they need to patch their system. So it's not really adding a value for the company, and they are looking in Book Bounty for those things that they really don't know. So I'm not usually reporting CVAs because most of the companies don't accept it. Yeah.
Although I'm imagining there's some hackers there waiting for 91 days, and on the 91st day, they hit as many as they can. I think another highlight here is the misconfiguration is a common error, right, for companies' cybersecurity. If they're not configuring the platform, there must be many out there, and these configurations are quite complex in their own right. One question is, how lucrative was that versus your time and reward for you?
Well, it was really good. As you mentioned before, I get 90 accepted reports. You can imagine I access to confidential information of companies. So imagine that. Well, not all of them understood in the same way. This is always happening. All of them really understand the importance of it. And also, in some cases, the systems I reported were test system or stage system, was not the main production system. So usually they don't feel the impact of the issue same way in production and in a stage or QA system. So it varies a lot from one program to another. This is also based on the maturity of the programs. In some of the programs in Bugcrowd, they had a special target month asset, and it was exactly this ServiceNow asset. So they have a multiplier for the bounty, so it was a really good amount. But it's not happening always in the same way. It depends a lot on the bounties and a lot on the maturity of the companies. Yeah.
Was the bounty similar across those that you were hitting? Or the variance between the bounty and what companies were putting on? You're talking about pre-production and the like, but this was exactly the same configuration flaw in all of them. But yeah, how do they measure the bounty if it's the same flaw for them?
Well, what I was accessing was the KVs. The KVs are the articles inside ServiceNow. So some articles contain critical information that allow me, for example, to jump into other systems of the company because they leave an article describing how to access XYZ system. So I escalate that into lateral movements to other systems. Of course, this is much more critical than if it's just some internal information that is not really critical for them. So depending on the information you found on the article, the impact that the company has is completely different. Also, not all the companies use ServiceNow for the same. Some of them I found that they use ServiceNow for the main cybersecurity knowledge repository. So it's not the same if you get access to all the cybersecurity information than if you just get the typical answers that you have to do to your customers, the standard ones. So depending on the information and depending on how I can use that information, they decide the bounties. Of course, not all the companies have the same tables for bounty. So some of them have for a critical one $100,000, and other ones have $3,000. So I mean, even maximum giving me a high in a program could be 10 times a critical in another one. So
Wow.
it depends a lot of that. Yeah.
So maybe I'll just come on your thoughts on bounties and how companies set that. That's quite a range between 100 grand and 3 grand. I take it obviously the company size might have been different, and as Fran said, how they are using a platform like ServiceNow and how critical it is. But yeah, what's the general approach companies might have to attract someone like Fran to make sure that they've got the right sort of target bounty there for them?
Well, I mean, it depends on the specific. Like typically when I'm running Bugcrowd's bounty program, what we're trying to do is weigh up between a good reward, so paying people the appropriate amount of money that we have within budget to make sure that we can maintain being attractive, and the other is making announcements to let people know when new features and things like that are coming out. So trying to make the scope as broad as you can to make sure people are happy to come and hunt. However, make it such that it is explicit enough so people know exactly where your crown jewels are and what they need to go after. So someone like Fran, who's obviously extremely talented, knows these are the types of things that would be considered a P1. So that's where his efforts would be going. And that's obviously much more valuable to us because, it's better bang for our buck.
Okay, and granted, I think also, Fran, it's the bounty for you, from a CISO's perspective, they put the price on the criticality, but they also need to service your time on how complex. It might not be a very critical sort of vulnerability, but it might be a complex one to solve, and might take more time. What's your thoughts there on sort of time versus reward versus the risk factor? Do you find how much time was required for you for each of those sort of bounties that you ran? Did it vary between 100 grand and 3 grand worth of your time as well?
Of course, I think in a global perspective, this is like a kind of a business, you know. Some customers is the customers where you save the month. Other customers are the customers that you keep working, you understand better, and you maybe in the future will have others. Of course, I always prefer 100,000 bounties than
I'm quitting
1,000
my
bounties.
job if it's like that. Yeah.
This is obvious, but this is not happening, at least for me, very often. This is part of the game that you should to accept as a book hunter. Some programs pay better, some programs pay less. Of course, as a book hunter, my approach is go first for the programs that pay more. This is
Yeah.
on my priority list. I have the programs that I know I'm involved and they pay more, and I'm open to report them more things that maybe I'm not 100% sure that will work for them, but I would like to provide them the information because of the possibility of having one of these bounties if you really fit into their threat model. Of course, this is not happening with programs that pay less. You try to be spend less time or be less risky sending them things that um, maybe they don't accept or maybe they don't really understand. Of course, I think not only on the size of the company but also on the maturity of the company, the bounties vary because of those two things, and we need to understand. We have a lot of frustration. And one of the worst things being a bug hunter is the frustration because you always think that your bugs are the best in the world, and sometimes you face with companies that thinks different than you, and you need to keep professional and try to keep reporting. Of course, in a global perspective, it makes sense. If not, there is not people doing that kind of things. I have talked many times with colleagues about the distribution of hunters all around the world, and of course, it's not the same if you live in a cheap country and you receive a small bounty. Maybe for you, it's a lot of money, but if you live in an expensive country and you receive a small bounty, maybe it doesn't make sense for you at the time because the expectations or the money you need to live in different countries are different. So this is also affecting researchers because the bounties are the same for all the countries in the world. It doesn't matter where you come from. So that's in my case, it makes sense because I'm doing it in my free time. So when I free time, when I have free time, I do it, and when I'm not, but of course, it makes sense for me.
Well, I was going to ask how long was this program for you, or this project, over those sort of 90? We talk about this 90 as a sort of a round figure, but yeah, was it months? A month? How
Months.
much months?
Months,
Yeah.
because there is many stages when you find the bug. First of all, is the bug was released in September, and I stopped hunting this, I think, in beginning of March. So it has been several months, and I have not all the time I want to do these things. And there are, you can imagine, last time I checked, ServiceNow had more than 20,000 customers. So it's a really big scope where
Right.
you can try to find programs that are in book bounty. Then you need to identify the programs. Then you need to run the attack, create the report, talk with the triagers and with the team in order to help them to understand and to solve it. It requires some creation of a script. So I mean, it's a long process. When you find one of these bugs that you think could be the bug that you will be working the next months, you try to find all the bugs and all the programs you can to do not miss any of them before you start to speak publicly about it.
Well, I was going to say, and it must be very rewarding for you. You must get extremely excited that, hey, this is actually working and you're starting to solve these problems. The other question, have you ever gone back and done a retest? I understand they can sort of do that configuration and get it retested. Have you gone back and checked and reclaimed the same bounty twice?
Yeah, I think it's important because you as a researcher, you are the best who knows what are you reporting. So they need to really understand all your reports. And if you have reported this 90 times, you have repeated this process 90 times at least, So you are the best who knows how to exploit it and to check if it's solved or it's not solved. So all the companies are asking to recheck. So in all the programs I've been helping the team, sometimes even to understand why this is critical, and sometimes just to help the security teams to check if their ServiceNow teams has corrected the bug properly.
Nice. You mentioned the international nature of Bugcrowd, and we've definitely picked that up in the series. Did you find these clients, these 90, were quite international or regionally orientated?
Most of the programs that I'm hunting are international companies, are very big companies, really well known. There are also some small ones, kind of universities or kind of things. So in general, most of them are very big and international companies. Yeah.
You mentioned 90 different companies. Now, each of these different companies would come from different industries, would have different types of as you said, different ways of using ServiceNow, like their security documentation or something. Now, having gone through 90 or more different areas and literally compromised specific parts of the ServiceNow, how did you maintain context for all of them? How did you identify the correct impact for you to be able to get the biggest bounty? Like what's your methodology for doing that?
Well, it's take into consideration that there is a huge amount of companies running service now. So the first thing that I need to understand is which ones have a bug bounty program, and this is a challenge because 22,000 companies, and I don't know how many programs. I don't remember how many programs I'm in Bugcrowd, but for sure I'm not in 22,000 programs in Bugcrowd. So first of thing is to understand which programs are serving now. Second is to identify their ServiceNow, the exact ServiceNow names, because some of them, for example, bookcrowd.servicenow.com is the logical ServiceNow platform for Bookcrowd, but sometimes they don't do that. They see BC, whatever, ServiceNow.com. So you need to identify the program manually or the ServiceNow platform manually with the program. So the impact is when you have identified the different ServiceNow for the Bugcrowd programs, then you need to read all the KVs, and it's a lot of time that you have to spend really trying to understand if the KVs you have are public, if the KVs you have are important things or not. So imagine that in a ServiceNow instance, you can have 10 million of KVs, so 10 million of articles. Yeah. I automated this to find some patterns, to find some words like passwords or tokens, but you need at some point to do a manual task that requires a lot of effort and a lot of time in your side. Because the most important thing in that cases is to be able to show the impact to the program, and then you will get the best bounty. You will go for the critical one when you are able to demonstrate that you really found something critical for them. Yeah.
I did have a similar question. It wasn't a matter of just going to the Bugcrowd platform and just putting in a search for ServiceNow related bug bounties. You really had to dig in to each of the bug bounty programs to find a ServiceNow related configuration, right?
One of the challenges I face in this case is because ServiceNow is a cloud service, so most of the companies don't use a URL like company.servicenow.com.
Mm.
They have a redirect from a different domain that is linked to their main support domain, like support.company.com, and then it's redirected to the ServiceNow instance that is in the cloud. So it's not always a direct fit between the domains you found and the domains that are in Bugcrowd, because they usually release, or they usually accept in the Bugcrowd list the domains that are linked to their official domain, not the ones that are linked to ServiceNow. But in the backend, how I'm finding the domains is using ServiceNow.com, because then you start to add words and then you find the programs of the different companies. So, I mean, it's not, it's completely a manual thing. It's not
Yeah.
something you extract all the domains from from Bookcrowd and then you have all the ServiceNow
You'd be
list.
a very
No,
rich
that's
man if you could have done that, I'm sure. So luckily, you probably couldn't. One thing we wanted to cover: vulnerability rating taxonomies. Saj, does this relate to that in terms of a misconfiguration and how sort of the rating sort of works, and then also the VDPs, vulnerability disclosure program?
Yeah, so the VRT definitely does relate in that sense, where it basically classifies what Bugcrowd would typically believe one of these vulnerabilities would be rated as. So this is like critical information disclosure type thing. So that would be typically a P1 vulnerability, passwords being leaked, something like that, P1. So at least it means our customers have a benchmark
Yeah,
thinking this, they should be thinking as a P1, not as a P4. So it's supposed to be a tool to be able to help hackers kind of move in the right direction, and help the customers be on the same page with the hackers at the right time.
and does that guide the bounty as well? Obviously, they put a price to that.
It helps the customer identify what scale they should be at. So yes, it means if it's critical information and the VRT says P1, they should be looking at the top of their bounty pool for
Yeah.
it.
Okay, and just talk us through the VDPs.
So VDPs, I think there's the entire community is kind of split on this one, because VDPs, while are effective for some, can also be misused by some, because at the end of the day, where this entire thing, everything that we're doing at Bugcrowd is because of the efforts run by the crowd. So without the crowd, Bugcrowd doesn't exist, to be very honest. Now, with that in mind, a VDP is basically giving a company the platform to be able to show impact. And the expectation from us is that they bring that impact with the hackers and then get the funding to be able to get an incentivized security research platform. So that means going after a bug bounty so that they can incentivize hackers, like Fran, to be able to turn around and do that deeper amount of research that makes it worth their while. Because when you go and provide that extra incentive, that's when you get the best impact by a long shot.
Got it.
Um, and that's also why I believe Bugcrowd is the first, if not the only, to have actually de-incentivized uh, the point system and like platform pointing system from our actual platform for VDPs, purely because we want to discourage people from abusing that system, and instead moving more towards financially incentivizing researchers for their amazing work.
Yeah. Well, look, Fran, we've heard from many CISOs that the Bugcrowd platform supplements their own security teams as well. So it's very, very important work, and we've sort of highlighted the important work that you've done. Maybe as a sort of a passing comment is, what's your general advice to other ethical hackers and even CISOs while you're at it? I'm surprised you're not one, but in terms of your day-to-day role, but yeah, just your general advice to hackers or people coming into the Bugcrowd community and starting, at least where to start. What's your general advice?
Well, the first thing that I really recommend is to start hunting and reporting. I mean, I'm sure that you will not have an accepted report if you don't send it. This is the first thing. You never know what is the threat modeling of a company till you start to work with them. So of course you need to read their policy. You need to understand what they don't want, what they want. You need to be clear with that, but you need to start trying and start hunting. Read the reports that other creators, read the articles that other book hunters are doing. It's important. But for me, the most important thing to be successful is to do what the rest are not doing. I mean, if you are going to launch Nuclei with the default settings without your own templates, you are going to launch tools that you have not spent time on it, and repeating the same like the others are doing, you will probably have a duplicate, because I'm always say that I'm not the best programmer, so someone else do it quicker than me. So I don't spend my time on these kind of things. Normally, sometimes it helps me to identify technology behind some websites, or I don't say I don't use normal tools, but I would say don't focus exclusively on that. Learn to find the impact on the companies and try to start to report these kind of things. Even if you have never seen a report like this before, or you have not seen any other researcher sending that before, try to create your own bugs, and try to create your own methodology. No one else will be able to tell you how to be success in Bugcrowd.
Well, just on that, I take it, have you mixed your skill set over the time, or do you find you've focused on certain sort of approaches and methodologies, or just over time, how have you adapted that, or you find the old tricks still work?
Of course, at the beginning, I tried like many others, the automated tools, and I feel by myself that this is not working. So my methodology was not always like that. In fact, when I'm invited to events that are specifically for a customer and they want you to focus in an asset, I change my methodology. Of course, I try to reproduce the books that I normally reproduce and send, but I also do classical bug hunting or classical pen testing, trying to find vulnerabilities on that part. But you need to understand that this is what 90% of the people will be doing, and the low harm rates will be found probably by someone else earlier than you. So
Nice.
yeah.
And Saj, I'll come to you. Any general advice? But I find this particular interview with Fran more on the misconfigurations on the sort of vulnerabilities versus the hacking approach. I imagine the advice would still stick even just to someone who is trying to break a system and or do an exploit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the entire idea that Franz basically said here is think about the bigger picture. That's like what I got out of it. So regardless of what you're actually exploiting, think about the bigger picture. Can this actually affect other people too? Then see if it does. So I mean, Franz has taken that to the whole next level. So yeah, exactly that.
But look, thanks so much, Fran, for that. Really important insights. And it's also a pleasure to cross to Madrid, Spain as well. So it makes it quite an international episode. But Francisco Bolivar, an ethical hacker, and also we won't go into your private role, but you're not even full-time doing this, but you've cracked a major one here on the Bugcrowd bug bounty platform. And once again, Sajeeb Lohani, who's here with me in Australia, in Melbourne, the Global Technical Information Security Officer with Bugcrowd. That's our Hack the Hacker series with part of our Bugcrowd series on MySecurityTV. Thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.